Hello everyone, Nick Doss, again with BCC Distribution. I was going to wait another minute or two as people are still joining, but we have a pretty extensive presentation that I wanted to get into. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so that way we don't go too far over should we push past the 12 p.m. Eastern time. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Today what we've got is a presentation that is specifically going to address a couple of things. It's going to address automated printing with SAP. It's going to talk about mobile printing. We're also going to talk about RFID printing and coding. But really, this is three full presentations more summarized to be put together because there are very cohesive components that make up a very complete solution. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Again, myself, Nick Doss with BCC Distribution. I'm here in our corporate office in Detroit, Michigan, Canton specifically, but I'm based out of Chicago. I am the Senior Account Executive here at BCC Distribution. Also in the room with me, I've got a few of the local folks here. I've got Candy and I've got Chris, who are both some of our equipment and solution experts for RF scanning and barcoding for SAP applications, including labels, printers, wireless, and so forth. And also on the line, I have a co-presenter, Mr. Gary Brewer. He is the director of our SAP Software Development and Technical Services. Gary, would you like to say hi?
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Gary's going to say a lot in just a few minutes, so just hang in there. But know, everybody on the line, you can ask questions. We're going to hold the questions until the end. This presentation is going to be recorded, so if you want to go back and reference something because we go really fast, that's absolutely fine. We'll let you know as soon as it's posted to our website. But we will take questions, time permitting, at the end, so send those to the question box. And between myself, Gary, Candy, Chris, we can pretty much address anything regarding printing for SAP. So bring your questions on. We'll be happy to take them. So with that said, let me click over to my slide here, use my fancy controller. One thing I want to note before we get started is on December 12th, if you'd like to go ahead and put a place mark in your calendar, we have a webinar specifically dedicated to Android operating system updates, migrations, impact on equipment, lifecycle management. If you'd like to know more, because you're a Windows Mobile or Windows CE user, or you're thinking about putting in Android-based technology for RF, tablets, etc., this might be a very good presentation for you. You can go to our website, send us an email, or reach out to your appropriate BCCD representative. So, recapping our agenda, we're going to do a quick introduction to BCC. I'm going to go real fast on that. Most of the participants today know who we are, but I'm just going to touch on the highlights. I'm going to talk about PrintASAP, what it is, who it's for, and why it might be beneficial for you, and how that is included in the automated printing environment, moving from a manual or a difficult printing process with SAP to something more optimized, flexible, scalable, etc. I'm going to talk about the importance and benefits of printing mobility, mobile printers, and really what mobile printing means. And then taking the next step, as it says, to automation with RFID. RFID, even just printing and coding could be a 1-hour presentation by itself, but I'm going to limit it to about 10 minutes at the end if I can. But I've got some great 101 and a little bit more in-depth 201 information for everybody today. So, let me start with BCC Distribution. Again, we're headquartered here outside of Detroit, Canton, Michigan. We got satellite offices throughout the U.S. We've been in business for a couple of decades now. Some important points that I wanted to get across to everyone is that we, including Gary on the line and his team, have a very diverse and knowledgeable team of SAP technicians with lots and lots of experience. We are a SAP certified partner. We are a Zebra certified partner. We are a bartender certified enterprise partner. We are SAP user ourselves. We have our own namespace, sandboxes, and we have a diverse group of partners. Partners meaning SAP systems integrators, MDM partners, equipment partners, RFID partners, label converters, so on and so on. Really, in a nutshell, this screen is designed to kind of show you, there's a lot of words here, but this is designed to show you that we provide turnkey solutions that increase optimization to your current processes. And reduce costs through time, through hard dollar cost savings. But how we do that is with two real key pieces. You could take this picture that we have and divide it in half. Half of the donut would be our software development side. We are an SAP software development company, and that's on the left. We got software for SAP, we've got all the software that runs on the devices, and all the services that go along with integrating that into your current environment. And then we've got the equipment and support on the right side. Obviously, these all go together to make a complete solution, a turnkey solution, but we are also an equipment reseller. We sell the equipment, we support the equipment, we know it, we certify it to work in an SAP application, and we certify it in our own SAP environment before we put it into production. We like to make sure that the solutions that we bring work in a real-world application, and we test them and certify them. So that way, when you get them, they are easy to adopt and they are as expected. So that's our quick BCCD introduction. If you'd like to know more, I did have the website, I believe, on the last slide. You could go to bccdistribution.com and you could peruse some of the products, solutions, and services that we offer while we go through this presentation. I myself am a multitasker, so that's absolutely fine. So you're printing documents and labels today. How can printing be optimized with SAP? That's the question. How can I optimize what I'm doing today? And that's what we want to show you. So first, let me start with what some people may be doing. And you can fall into a couple of different categories, but just hang with me. And I hope that I touch on something specifically that you might be doing today that you're trying to address. The first one we see here is a manual printing process. This is standalone. This could be the process of opening a software package. You select a label, you enter the data, and then you hit print, and then out comes a label, document, form, etc. from a printer. And in this scenario, when you hit print, you could actually query a database like Excel, like Access, something custom that you have like SQL, or potentially your database could even interface to SAP through a custom Z table with some ABAP programming. But still, this is a manual printing process. The next process would be the more common utilized smart forms, which is a newer version of the SAP script methodology with printing. This is a native, direct connected SAP printing process, but it does have some serious complexities, which we're going to dive into in just a few moments. I have intentionally excluded Adobe Forms because that is its own unique animal. And when we're talking about label printing for mobile printers, tabletop printers, Adobe Forms really doesn't come into play without some very specific considerations and prerequisites. And lastly, the focus of our presentation today for the automated printing section is the PrintASAP methodology that BCC Distribution has and has delivered for many clients, many of who are actual referenceable in all types of different vertical markets. This is the PrintASAP interface. And the real strength of this, besides the actual core interface that we embed within SAP, that's native SAP, is the bartender component, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that much more in depth. So, I described a couple of different printing scenarios. Maybe you fall into one of these specific categories. What I didn't mention was obviously other ERP systems, custom front-end applications, where you're using a middleware software package to drive printing. I just focused on kind of the three primary groups. And what we did before our presentation today is we did a little bit of a survey for our customers that would be interested in learning more, and those are the topics that people want to know more about. So let's talk about the specific pain points that you may be experiencing. Maybe you had a hard time modifying label formats, editing label formats. You put a label in place, the printing process works great, and then a customer says, I want this on my label. Well, making that change requires a couple of different people that get involved, with a couple of different expertise or skill sets, and those resources may or may not have availability. I need to change a printer. Printers fail, printers go down, you replace them with new printers. Changing a printer to a hard-coded or embedded or a form-based printing process can be very tedious. Adding and modifying customer logos and graphics. Logos and graphics are its own unique skill set. When you have an application that is requiring dynamic printing, if it's a hard-coded application, that requires you to have multiple templates, so that can be cumbersome. Adding new labels for internal or external use. using mobile printers, or not specifically mobile printing, but redirect printing to another printer. So I send printers to this label printer or this desktop printer, but the printer's not working. It's out of toner, it's broken, it's not connected, I can't see it. I don't know the status, but it's not there, so I need to resend a print job to another process. Well, if it's a hard-coded printed application and it's defaulted to a specific printer, I have no ability to be able to do that, and that drives me nuts. Another example of a pain point would be utilizing web printing for multiple users. So this will be a supported and additional feature beyond maybe what you're doing today. An example would be, I have an automated printing process that works great, but now I need to leverage the ability to be able to access and print custom or manual labels on demand internally inside of my business processes or externally for my suppliers to make sure that when I get a product or I move a product or I label a product, it's labeled in a compliant way that meets my process. And then I believe this might be the last one, is the capability to generate a label to and from mobile printers. So these are a couple of the pain points. Maybe these fit a couple of the participants that are attending today. Because we mentioned Bartender, I'm just going to speak to one slide for Bartender specifically because of the importance of this as part of our PrintASAP solution. So Bartender is a very excellent tool. It is a printing software program. It is made for designing and printing. It is a WYSIWYG program. If you're not familiar with what WYSIWYG is, it means what you see is what you get. When I drag and drop a barcode and scale it to size and put human readable on a label and I hit print, it should come out of the printer the exact same way that it looks on the screen. That's what WYSIWYG means. Bartender enables SAP Printing. It enables browser-based printing. It allows for easy design. Think about it this way. If you yourself, you as a participant, maybe you're a higher up or maybe you're a technical person, if you have to go make a label change, think about the complexity to actually change that label. Think about the other option, which would be opening a software program like Microsoft Word. If you open up Microsoft Word, change your document, save it, hit print, that's really what Bartender gives you. It's a WYSIWYG, simple user interface tool that really enables you to easily make changes, create new labels, etc. And we're going to talk about this more and more as we go through. So really at the end of the day, the goal is to really automate the printing process for a couple of different scenarios. And I've got a few different scenarios here in a picture graphic or an infographic form. I have handheld devices, be it a PDA or a traditional RF scanner for the warehouse. I've got my SAP GUI PC workstation, or maybe I've got a tablet that has a custom inspection form. It has a straight interface to a web browser. That could also be what would be my manual or custom label printing application from the tablet. Again, just an example, but these are the printing technologies that I would like to agnostically print to directly triggered from SAP. I don't want my operators going through multiple steps to generate a label. I want it to be a seamless part of the process. I execute a transaction for a receipt or something, and then the label just comes out as it's supposed to, and then I put it directly on my product. Be it a one-to-one for an automatic label applicator, one-to-one for a manual printer, come out in a quantity of 20 out of my label printer, so I take that and apply it to 20 different boxes, or if it's a bill of lading form or a shipping document that shoots out of my laser printer. So, going a little fast, I'm going to slow down for just a second before I hit the gas again and tell you what is PrintASAP. So the PrintASAP solution, which I've talked about a little bit here, and I'm going to have Gary get into the technical specifics, so if you like the technical details, you can understand how it works. But this is what it is. It's designed to be a simplified enterprise printing system. Print at nearly any printer, automates printing. It allows for custom standalone printing in addition to your automated printing process. No extra licensing or functionality needed. It's right there. It's WYSIWYG. You can add printers easily, and programming experience, which I touched on a couple of minutes ago, is not required to do these things. It simplifies existing template design and implementation of compliance labeling. If you're one of the folks that has a compliance label, be it for pharmaceutical or chemical or food or any one of the GS1 related specific compliance requirements for barcoding, this allows you to easily be able to accommodate that quickly without having to go through the complexity of understanding the printer code and what the limitations are with SAP. It's also scalable. You can have it for one site, very simple, or you can have it from multiple sites. It grows with how you need it. And then it can be centralized and standardized for easy support. Okay, so real quickly, we talked about some of the pain points in the system at a high level, but let's just take a look at what are we printing. I've got a few examples, and this isn't, maybe you've got some labels that aren't included here, or some printed documents that aren't included, but I just got a few examples. So I've got a G10 label, which is a Global Trade Identification Number. It's a more generic, can be specific, serialized label for barcoding. I've got raw material receipt labels, which you'll see here as an example. I've got warehouse, location, rack, shelf, bin labeling. I've got a handling unit label. This also could be a storage unit label. I've got a pick list. I've got a master label. This will be something off of a production line for a finished good product. I've got this label, and it's brown because it's sprayed on inkjet. This would be a case coder. It's not a label, but it is a printed form, but just using direct part marking technology. And then I've got a laser document, which is the bill of lading. I've got shipping, and then I've got an RFID tag, which we'll touch on at the end of this presentation. But again, this was just a few examples to show you the product, location, and other associated things that go along with the process of in the one door and out the other. So a very smart person and a close friend of mine once told me that in a presentation you have to provide the attributes of the system. And what he specifically meant by that was you had to tell me what's good, what you can do, and what's bad, what you can't do. So here what I've kind of done, and there's a lot of bullets, so bear with me, and you can go back and reference this later if you'd like. But on one side, I've got the Smart Forms SAP script printing methodology, and I've got some of the notes that are important to this process. Yes, it works for SAP. It's SAP certified, direct connected. The Smart Forms and SAP script is native to SAP. It uses embedded code, meaning printer language code, or ITF. And if you need to know what an ITF is, it's there at the bottom if you're not that technical person. And here is really where it starts to differentiate into pain points or negative attributes depending upon your application. If you have one label and that label doesn't change, this might be a fantastic and perfect or ideal process for you. However, it's ideal for that type of scenario, but it is limited to the printer language. Your brand, model, and configuration. It has limited barcode support. If you have SAP, I believe it's ECC 6 Enhanced Impact 7, you don't have 2D barcoding capabilities within the SAP system in Smart Forms, but if you have Enhanced Impact 8, you do. But still, that 2D barcoding is limited to the capabilities of what SAP has embedded in that process. So it's not a dynamic barcode, it's a, here's a barcode, we hope it works for you. Graphics handling is extremely limited, if at all. It requires your printer font capabilities and a couple of other points here. So let me go through, again, as a comparison, there are drawbacks or positive and negative attributes to both. So again, PrintASAP methodology is for ECC 6, S/4HANA. It's SAP certified, direct connectivity. It's a native SAP-based printing solution. Here is where it starts to differentiate, and you're going to see it going down two different paths. It uses Bartender. For most people, this is a good attribute. For some, it is a consideration you need to be aware of. It is licensed by printer. When we look at the bullet points side by side, ITF's hard-coded application, there's no cost for that, except for your resource and your time. With Bartender, it's a license, it's software. It has costs associated to it with the software and the maintenance. Just being honest and open. Next, it's ideal for using mini formats. If you have to make changes to your formats regularly, this is a very, very ideal scenario for you. It's printer agnostic. If you got Zebra, Sato, Intermec, Honeywell, LXD, Kyocera, IBM, if you got all these different printer brands, good luck coding to that, because Bartender allows you to do that agnostically to any of those devices. If it has a printer driver, you can print to it. Extensive barcode support. Now, somebody specifically wanted me to dive into the details of the barcode support. I can't do that because that would take me an hour by itself. But let's just say there are about 100 different symbologies, about 500 different format variations, and it is infinitely customizable to meet your specific needs. You are only limited by your printer's capabilities when printing with Bartender. Next, graphics handling options are substantial. I can actually use what's called conditional printing, which is a little bit more sophisticated, and I'll get into that a little bit later, potentially if we have time. It's Unicode compliant, so people that are generating English, Chinese Mandarin, Japanese, etc., if you have the font available within your system, Bartender can help you with the compliance labeling. Minimal printer maintenance, because it's all based on the driver, very simple. Minimal format template maintenance, again, it's a WYSIWYG tool. If you're an authorized user and you're approved to do so, it's easy to actually maintain those templates and put them into a production workflow environment. It enables workflow and revision control, so we can get a little bit more security and allow specific people and processes to manage how the labels get out into production. It allows printer status monitoring. This is kind of overlooked, and I'm going to get back to this in a minute. I was about to dive in, but I'll wait because I have a slide on it. Supports centralized and decentralized architecture. Nick, why in the world would you want decentralized architecture? A lot of customers that we're working with today are larger enterprise businesses that have SAP that is connected to multiple sites. When a site goes down, sometimes manufacturing stops, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they need the ability to keep on printing, so they establish databases that are synchronized, so if SAP goes down, the data is still there, and their printing process can still run. That would be an example of a decentralized architecture. Still managed at a centralized level, but decentralized so that way you can keep on printing for mission-critical labeling. It enables reprinting, allows for manual label printing, and then web-based printing. There's a lot of bullets there. Feel free to go back, and we can talk about this offline if you'd like. So those are some of the attributes, positive, negative, depending upon your vision and your opinion on how the printing process should work. Here is a visualization about what I'm trying to say. On the left, you've got the WYSIWYG tool, BCC Distribution, human readable, a 1D barcode, a 2D barcode. Takes about 10 seconds to create that label and hit print to my printer, to whatever printer I want, as long as that driver is loaded. Piece of cake. Anyone in the room and on the phone can do it. On the bottom right, that is the other method. Actually maintaining the code within the application and making changes to that may be easy if you're experienced, but anyone knows that when you make a change to a coded-based printing application for a label, I make a change to that code, I have to generate that code to my process and then generate a label directly, and I'm going to have to make a tweak. Something shifted over, something's out of position, something's blurry, some font's not right, something is going to need to change. And you might ask, why is there two boxes on the right? One shows you an example of a graphic, and one shows you not a graphic. So you see all that code in there, that would represent a logo or a graphic, like a symbol, like a CE or a UL or something like that. That really shows you the complexity that goes into managing that. And this code is just for one Zebra printer, 200 DPI, 4-inch label printer. If I have 300 DPI, or if I have a different brand or a different model and config, I'm going to need a whole lot more of these, and I'm going to have to know the code for those devices. So I paused on it a minute ago, but now I'm going to come back to it, and this is something somebody wanted me to address specifically. So printer control. With manual printing, you do have some manual control, but it's a manual process. With SAP Script Smart Forms, you have zero. It's one way. It's send it and hope for the best. With the PrintASAP solution, leveraging Bartender, we've got some flexibility. We can tell the printers what to do. Why would I want to tell my printer what to do and have the ability to override it? A very good example, I've seen this about 1 million times. I print a label, it's about 1,000 labels, I walk away, I come back, my operator says the labels look like garbage, they're not printing well, I can't hardly see them, so I jacked the heat up and I did this, I did that. I went through and I pushed a whole bunch of buttons on my printer and now I can't get it to work. If I can control my printer through my output, I can override those settings, so no matter what the operator does to the printer, I can make sure my darkness is right, I can make sure my print speed is right, I can make sure basically any setting in that printer that can be controlled to the driver, I can manage that myself. Another example, I've got a couple customers and users that are interested in automatic print and apply. This is the same process. If I have a 24-hour operation with shift changeover, I can use a real-time clock to manage data on my label, which means the clock and the printer rolls from 11:59 to 12 a.m. and now I need to change my batch information, my lot information, my serialized information. All the information in that label can adjust accordingly based upon the format that I sent down. Additionally, with print and apply, one big issue is, and this is not just print and apply, I'm sorry, this is like all different types of printers. I send 10 labels down and I just can't get the right printer out, but I send a brand new one down and there's 50 or 100 or multiple labels out in front of it that I've sent. So what I actually need to do is shut the printer down, reboot the printer, resend the label, and then bam, I got my label. But that requires you to walk all the way out to the printer, come all the way back potentially to where my triggering process happens. Why do that? That doesn't make any sense. Just put the command necessary in the actual label format itself, send it down, and then it's wiped out. And your first printer out is exactly how you need it. This is some examples, and there are lots of examples of this, of the printer control capabilities that you have utilizing Bartender in the PrintASAP architecture. So, taking a minute to pause real quick, let's talk about some examples of PrintASAP labeling solutions that we have right now, out of the box, ready to go if you wanted to put it in play. We've got goods received from a purchase order for product labeling and pallet labeling. We've got process order and production order documentation, such as a traveler. We've got process order, production order, finished goods labeling, such as, again, that pallet of materials that is being produced and built and then labeled before a forklift comes and goes to take it away. It's that finished good label for tracking it internally. I've got picking documentation, which can be picking to a case, picking to a pallet, picking multiple pallets. There are so many different options that we have available that are just, again, out of the box simplicity for for inventory processes you already have today. And then the last example I have would be a packing list or a bill of lading document that has all the components that might be in specifically a box. And this is very common if I need to put a pack list and put it into that shrink wrap on the side and then put a handling unit label on the side. Sometimes it goes in the box, sometimes it goes in a sleeve, but again, it's just a part of the process. So, Gary, I'm going to ask you to take over for a minute while I take a drink of water, but what I'm going to have everybody look at here is we've talked about the concept of PrintASAP and what it can do from a high level and why it would be of potential value to your printing application. What I'd like Gary to do is walk you through just 2 quick slides that shows how it works, more specifically in detail, because some people want to know, what it looks like under the hood. Gary, would you mind?
Sure, absolutely. Well, basically, we're talking about, again, printing from SAP itself. So from your ECC6 or HANA S4 system, we would have any transactions. We can actually tie into your existing GUI transactions if you need it as well. From there, those would interface to our PrintASAP interface that we've also put into SAP. Again, all that is code inside your SAP system. And that then is basically our interface to talk to Bartender. This example right here is basically using an output file. It's using a file interface where it's dumping a flat file then onto the Bartender server into a SAP share folder. And typically we break those up by system where we would have one for development, one for quality, one for production, and we have the ability through Bartender to control whether the integration that is pulling for those files actually picks them up and processes them or not. So again, a lot of control from the integration standpoint as to what systems are being monitored and pulled for and which ones aren't. And then once the integration picks up the flat file from SAP, there's information in that file that tells it specifically what format file to use, which Bartender template, which printer to send it to, and the number of copies, and any other specific information that may need to be used, whether it be integrating images or graphics and those sorts of things. And at that point, it basically hands it off to Bartender, and bartender then submits it to the print job, to the specific printer to be output. Here we have yeah, sure. So then there's a couple of other integration methods. The one that I just spoke to is file. Nick, if you'd like to speak to some of the others, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this. We've got, we're halfway through and we've got 2/3 left, so I'm going to go pretty quick. So yeah, as you said, Gary, we talked about the file interface example, a very reliable, simple process, but these are just for everyone's viewing, some other options that are available. Some people like to do a web service call, some people like to use database or socket connectivity depending upon the speed and the interface type. These are just some of the additional options. Gary, I'd like to you mentioned this just a second ago. Can you speak to this as well?
Yeah, sure. So, again, the integrations within Bartender are the pulling methods. Basically, there's a couple different ways to do that. We've got a couple different options here shown. The first one up at the top basically shows 2 different integrations within a single deployment. So right now we're able to control stopping and starting of those integrations within a single deployment there. On the bottom, we have basically kind of the same things, but they're split out. Their development and quality are split out between 2 separate deployments. The beauty of that is that you have the ability then to deploy your integrations for your production, your quality, and your development separately without any risk of doing any harm to your production environment.
Yeah, perfect, Gary. So I'm going to come back to you in just a second, so hang with me. But I got one more slide I just wanted to touch on real quick. So again, I talked about the additional support options, and Gary, thank you for providing some detail about how it works. One of the additional options, or 2 rather, that you'd like to have potentially for your application, and this is always a request from our customers. They ask, we've integrated this PrintASAP solution, and it works great, and it's exactly what we expected. Maybe we need to make some changes, add it to some additional printing functionality, but also, can we print manual labels? Yes, you can. Absolutely. You've got a bartender instance there. You can install another bartender application on an individual PC for custom manual labeling. This is very common for shelf, rack, bin location labeling. Sometimes you just want to have a program and a printer and some labels just for making a simple barcode label for location labeling purposes. So yes, it allows for that. No additional purchase or application, service, product needed. Additionally, this is something that was asked of me, is the web browser piece, and I have multiple slides on this previously, but I just want to narrow it down to a half here, which is selective print functionality from a web-based portal. So I want to give users inside my business or outside as a supplier access to labels that I define and are compliant with my processes, but I want them to be able to print it, and I want to tell them what printer to use and let them do it themselves. This is also an application that comes with the Bartender Suite that we implement into your system that allows for client-side and server-based printing. What I mean by that is I have multiple users on multiple PCs driving printing to a warehouse, to a single printer, would be my server-based example. My other example would be client-side printing. So I've got multiple suppliers, all different businesses, all different printers, all different locations. They're doing printing themselves. And that basically requires that you have the loaded printer driver on both the server and the client itself to be able to perform that. But again, a feature that's included with the Bartender application as a part of our PrintASAP solution can accommodate this specifically. Next, I wanted to talk about real quickly, RF, meaning RF scanning, and mobile printing go together hand in hand. And we talk about RF scanning, I'm talking about mobilized and optimized RF SAP transactions. So this is something that our PrintASAP solution works extremely well with, and I'm going to take a minute to let Gary tell you more, and we're going to show you on this Zebra TC7 series device an example of an optimized printing, reprinting transaction, which has a lot of options that is available for our end users. This isn't stuff that's out of the box with SAP. This is a BCCD solution that we've built because customers say, I receive product, I label it, it sits on the shelf for 6 months, it comes back, I have to break it apart and relabel it again, but I want that data. I want to be able to reprint labels. Something's damaged, I want to be able to reprint labels. I print it and it fell off, I want to reprint labels. I need to generate labels on demand that are unique to my process that I've never generated before. there are so many different options. So this is going to walk you through a couple of those options, and it's just one slide. But again, this is an RF-optimized SAP transaction that utilizes PrintASAP on the back end to generate labels. Gary, would you mind? I'm going to start the video to show this transaction, and if you could speak to it, that would be excellent.
Sure. All right, so then in this specific example, we would select 5 from our main menu and then go into the label print menu, option number 3. And here we have 5 separate transactions that allow the user to reprint various labels. We're going to go into option number 1 for an SU label reprint. And here they would scan or key in the storage unit number that they need to reprint. For example, they may have a label that it was printed for one corner of the pallet and they want to print another one. You select the printer ID, typically by scanning a barcode on the front of the printer, and it prints the label. Another option here is option number 5 for delivery label reprinting. So for example, we want to reprint our shipping handling unit again. So here we would select option number 1 and simply just scan the handling unit number that you want to print, select the printer, and you've basically now reprinted a label that you had from before if it had been damaged or whatever. Now we'll go into a specific customer labels. We can go in and enter that customer specific identification, enter the delivery that would have been shipped to them. It's going to show us from SAP what number of pallets were shipped to them, and we want to print a specific pallet label, and we just generated that label, sending it to the printer that we entered for. So any label that we've basically printed during a transaction, we can include that as an on-demand printing, so long as any of the data that is required to print that label could be entered again so that we can look up the information in order to reprint it.
Yeah, awesome, Gary. Thank you so much for speaking to that. And just for reference, before we move on, and we're going to talk about mobile printing next, what I wanted to quickly reference, we went through the PrintASAP and the PrintASAP solution and the technical details really quickly, even though it is 40 minutes in already. We have a previous presentation on our YouTube channel, or you can find it on our website, that talks specifically about PrintASAP and specifically SAP-optimized printing in depth for about an hour and 15 minutes. And you could fast forward, rewind, replay, etc. But there's a more in-depth version of the summarized version that we just provided, as well as presentations that talk about the transaction that we showed just a moment ago, as well as other SAP optimized transactions that BCC Distribution offers, called our PrintASAP solution. So with that said, let me move on to mobile printers. And again, I want to try to move through this real quickly, so that way there's time for Q&A at the end. So you're printing documents today. What's the value of mobilizing printing? Candy, who was in the room with me, very smartly told me, she's like, customers are getting charged back for labels. It's mislabeled and they're getting charged for it. So that is a big piece. Mobile labeling allows me to be able to make sure that my labels are a 1-to-1 label ratio. I have the product in front of me. I scan the information. I know exactly what label. The label pops out. There's only one. There's not 100 to choose from. That one label goes on that one product. Time spent going back and forth. If your material handlers are waiting for a dedicated person to generate labels. If you're throwing away unused labels. If you have unique identification, unidentified inventory in your warehouse. Somebody sees it. There's pallets up here, pallets there that's not labeled, but I got to walk back to the label room, find out what it is, generate the label, walk back out here. I don't have time for that. Mobile printer will allow me to do that very easily. Readable barcodes if something's damaged or falls off, and then being able to label location labels directly at the spot. Probably don't want to stop there to be able to label receipt at checking where inventory movement. We're going to focus on now is very many printer options. We're going to talk about dedicated label mobile printers, mobile label printers, not receipt printers, not receipt printers that can do labels, label printers for inside the 4 walls, because there's so many options. We could spend an hour on this by itself. And you'll see at the bottom, there is a P4T. This was discontinued last year, but there's still support on this device. This is the thermal transfer option that's still out there. Still a lot of people that are using it, that is still a supported device, and I just want to have that on there as well. So let's talk about some fun facts. I like to try to be fun when I can. So this is a 4-inch mobile printer. This is a very common industrial, rugged, high-duty cycle label printer. It can withstand big drops to concrete. Direct thermal technology, if you don't know what that means you do not use a ribbon. So it's not really designed to be a long-lasting label. It's designed to be a, what we say, about a 1 year, maybe a 2 year, depending upon the conditions of the environment. Multiple options for print width, connectivity, operating range. You can have it in a pretty cold environment. Tons of options and accessories, and then media handling. So when we say labels, it could be a label, a tag, a receipt, and a whole bunch of other options. But somebody asked me this question, Nick, how many labels can I get on a roll with a mobile label printer, because I just don't know if it's going to be of value. Here you go. If you're using an industry standard 4x6, on this mobile printer, which has a 2.6-inch outside diameter roll, you can have 105 labels per roll, just as an example. Just welcoming John Newman to the group. If you wanted to say hi to everybody. We're a third of the way through, and we have about 10 minutes left.
Good morning.
All right. So for mobile printing, see, these are some of the examples of how you would utilize mobile printing. At receiving, for raw materials, production, inspections, deliveries, case picking, label pallet labeling, shipping, and location labeling, just to name a few. And you can see there's a shoulder strap, belt clip, there's a whole bunch of different options. For forklift configurations, this is somewhat what it could look like. If the label roll of the label roll capacity of that mobile printer is not enough for you, there's a fan fold option that can feed labels. You could have more labels going through that printer. Also, if you wanted to have a scale integration, like this shows on the right with the forklift, you can actually have input from the actual forklift itself, feeding data into that mobile printer in addition to your handheld device. So some people talk about mobile printers, but they forget about the other piece. Well, I could actually mobilize printing by using a work cart. And I could take printers that I have, like a tabletop printer, and throw it onto that battery-powered cart. And this is more of a mobile workstation type environment, but still falls under the umbrella of mobile printing. So I wanted to touch on that quickly. Really, at the end of the day, your mobile printing solution kind of consists of a couple of key components, and these are those what I call 5 components. You've got your certified RF device, your optimized RF transaction, your PrintASAP solution that's driving printing, your certified mobile printing. And when I say certified, I say that because we go through a very strict process of making sure the devices are compatible with SAP and how you're going to use them in a real-world application. That's what certified means. These devices are not plug and play. Don't have the suspicion that you can just buy one and plug it into your application, because it's not that simple. And then obviously the wireless. And when I talk about wireless, I'm talking about the 802.11, not necessarily the Bluetooth. Bluetooth would be more of a direct support application, and it's a little bit different, has its own complexities. So that was mobile printing very fast. Again, if you want to go reference the slides, you can after the fact. But I just wanted to address that mobile printing provides some clear value when your barcode labeling needs exceed the ability of what your fixed or stationary printers can do today. If you have a need for more flexible label printing at the point of receipt, on the forklift, at the point of shipping, packing, etc., mobile printing may be a very good option for your application. So I got my segue here to a mobile RFID printer. I didn't want to exclude that. Zebra does offer a mobile RFID printer encoder, which takes us to RFID. And I think we have enough time to get to these last few slides here. But from an RFID perspective, RFID is a science experiment. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that before, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But there are we'll call it two categories for the sake of conversation today. There's the printing and coding component, and then there's the data collection component. What's obviously excluded from this is the big circle that entwines both, which is the software component. But we're talking about the printing piece of RFID today. So what is RFID? A lot of people know how to spell it, but they don't know what it actually means. It's radio frequency identification. It's electromagnetic fields using radio waves to actually identify products without line of sight. Like it says there, barcodes require line of sight. You can read them one at a time. RFID, you can read in a box or behind another product or not directly in the direction that you're facing. They can hold larger amounts of data. You can read multiple tags simultaneously. And RFID tags can be reused over and over again, meaning I can read, write, validate, identify a product, and when it's done, if I want to reuse my tag, should it be a tag that I can reuse, I can re-encode that with new data. Here's a visualization of an example. So I've got all these barcodes in this product. All these barcodes on product inside of a box. I close up the box. Now I just assume, based on the label on the outside, that everything's correct on the inside. If those are all RFID tags, there's 10 products. I close the box. I can put a tag on the outside, and I can put a tag on the inside for each of those products, and I can validate that information. Should my tag get ripped off? Should my tag get destroyed? Should there be some anti counterfeiting considerations I need to take into play? I can use an RFID reader to read all 10 of those products without even opening the box. Just a clear example. Not going to spend much time on this, but RFID has been trending up for years and years and years based on some market data research. It's growing for manufacturing and transportation. It's getting more stable, it's getting more reliable, it's getting less expensive, but still is heavily predominant in retail operations. So here are some examples of RFID applications. If you fit into one of these categories, RFID might be something that you would want to consider. General process improvement internally is one of the big ones. I have barcoding today, but I could put in some fixed portals to automate the process so there's no scanning involved. I just want to take the next step. Easy for me to say. Pallet and case tracking and distribution, high value assets or serialized products, work in process if there's different stages for something being built, manufactured, packaged, etc. Then RFID would be good for those station identifications. Returnable item tracking, product tool tracking, and safety. There's a lot of places where people can't go, where an RFID tag and reader can go. So those are some examples of applications. Now here's some 101, just to break it down because there's a lot of people that have incorrect perceptions about what RFID is. I'm going to try to break it down as simple as I can for us today. We're talking today, right now, when I talk about printing and encoding, and I talk about traditional, low cost, I'm talking about passive technology, meaning no battery. I'm talking about UHF, which means ultra high frequency. It allows us long read ranges, like 30 feet, depending on your product and the scan. Your scanner, and your label. I'm talking inexpensive. I'm talking small and very, very long life. Well, battery powered and HF and things like that also fit into these categories, but not all of them. They are very specific application, and I'm also not talking about real-time location systems. So, a lot of people have never seen an RFID tag before, or they don't know really what it looks like. So here's an example. There is an antenna, as you see here, and there's a really, 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 really tiny small chip in there that is blown up to show you what's inside that chip of an RFID tag. This is what an RFID tag is. All that squiggly lines and fancy design on the actual RFID inlay, it's rabbit ears. That's the best way I can describe it. It is a way for that information to be received and transmitted back to the receiving unit. So if you've never seen an actual RFID tag, here's an example of one from Zebra. So front and back, 3x1 label, very common. Very common 4x6 label with an RFID inlay on the back. Both of these are alien options. And then there's some specialty products. I've got a rail car, I've got a hang tag, I've got windshield, and that big roll that's on the table. This would be something you can actually run through a printer encoder, and it's very cool because you can put this on metal, wood, plastic, which is products that are not very good with RFID. You can see it's a little bit thicker, and that's why it's got that weird shape. So when it goes to the printer, the print head doesn't bounce. But I can still print on top, I can still encode that tag, and it can fit on metal, assets, laptops, bales of lumber, pretty much anything you want to apply it to. But it all comes back to that most important piece, which is testing your application. Proof of technology, making sure it works. Proof of concept, trialing your application, and then growing up from there. So We're not going to get into depth about the data collection piece, but I just wanted to show you real quickly how an RFID tag works. We're talking about that RFID label that's printed and encoded. This is how it works. And again, passive UHF. I've got a reader, whether it's a fixed or mobile device. It sends the power. It sends the request to the tag. The tag captures it, validates it, transmits the information back, and then the reader captures that information and displays it or populates, collects it, reports it, etc. That's how it works. So a lot of people say, I want an RFID printer, and then they really can't provide an explanation of what they actually need to do. So let me very simply talk about what printing is and what encoding is. Printing, as everybody knows, is self-explanatory. It's visual data on the surface of the label, human readable, text, barcode, graphics, etc. You can have an RFID tag that is pre-encoded and technically call that printing an RFID label, but you're not. You're printing a label that is an RFID label or tag that can be commissioned at a later time, and I'll get into commissioning in just a second. Then there's encoding. Encoding data is actually putting specific data into the RFID chip, the memory, the inlay of that RFID tag. It's immediately commissioned, meaning data is coming from SAP, it's coming through my PrintASAP solution, and then it's being driven down to the printer. So I already know that is a serialized piece of information and what it's going to be applied to because it was generated on demand specifically for that product. It's linked to the barcode. It can be, rather, linked to a barcode data source, or it can be concatenated data. If you don't know what that means, I've got barcode data, I've got a time and date, I've got batch information, I got material information, I got location information. I can put all that together and put it within the RFID tag itself, so that way I can capture all the information I need. And when I say encode, what that means is there's an RFID label coming through the printer. It reads it, makes sure that it's a good tag, that it's readable, writes the data to that tag, and then reads it and validates it back. If it's not, it'll usually exit out or do something, pause, whatever you want to define your printer to do. But that is the reading and encoding process. Printing can happen simultaneously with that, but no, when you're printing a label, a lot of people have the expectation a label prints out and it takes about half a second for the label to come out. RFID encoding will have multiple attempts and can slow down the encoding and printing process, so keep that in mind. Here are some examples of RFID printers, and boy, there are a lot of them. They are not created equal, so you will not get the same performance expectation from each and every printer. But there's print engines for label applicators, there's mobile printers, desktop, mid-range, and then high-end printers. The top are Zebra, the middle are what are called the middle are what is called Honeywell now, but which is actually Intermec and Datamax O'Neill products. And then you've got Sato on the bottom right. There are other brands. These are some of the industry leaders. Zebra, from an RFID compliance, regulatory, and capability standpoint, is something that I personally like to go with myself. So what is this chip memory data? Real quickly, this is what you're encoding data to. There are four different banks of information. You're basically encoding a product code like a UPC, but it's called an EPC, which identifies the product, and then the data you want into the user memory. And that memory is basically limited to the capabilities of the tag. So here are the different sizes of tags, here are the different feature sets, form factors, performance, and then you get into the other component, which is the memory itself. They start very low with hexadecimal and ASCII-based characters at 496 bits, and then they go way up to 196 kilobyte tag. Obviously, you see the price on the left. So with more memory, with more sophistication, with more functionality, the price goes up. But just to keep all things equal, the price of an RFID tag, while less expensive today, is about 10 cents, maybe less, but still is a lot more than the cost of an average barcode label, which is about a penny or less, again, depending upon the tags that you're using. Very important part. So we talked about PrintASAP at the beginning, and a very important piece of what I wanted to identify today for RFID from the standpoint of printing and encoding is that with the PrintASAP solution, it's RFID ready. All you need to do is test and validate the performance of the right label or tag that you want to use, whether it's an adhesive tag or a tag you staple on or clip onto a product. You want to select the right printer and encoder that has the capability to run that tag, and then update your label format with an RFID data source. And then bam, it's ready to go. And what do I mean by the data source? And I'm pretty much on my last screen, just so you know, is that field, as you can see, is back up a second. This is the bartender user interface when I'm designing a label. That little purple spot that's highlighted on the top left of my user interface is the object that is the RFID information that's going to be encoded into that tag. In this case, it's a Zebra print engine. So what you would specifically do is treat that as another object on the label, just like your barcode. Your data is coming in, SAP is identifying, I want XYZ on my barcode, I want XYZ plus ABC plus 1, 2, 3 in my RFID tag. Let bartender have the business rules to decipher that information. SAP's process is just to output and trigger the data. Bartender picks it up, puts the information together, whether it's singular or concatenated, and drives it down to the printer, encoder, the RFID device of your choice, and it is very, very seamless. It's not extremely complicated to do this. The data collection piece is the other side of the coin, which we're not talking about today. But PrintASAP is an RFID-ready solution that can enable RFID printing and or mobile printing easily and seamlessly. So with that said, if you have some questions, go ahead and submit those questions. I'll take a look at the questions that we may have, and then I'll try to address those questions, time permitting here. But also, if you want to go back and reference some information that we talked about specifically today, you can visit the website, and we've got some information on PrintASAP. We've got information on mobile printers. We've got information on RFID, as well as all the individual components that go along with these systems. Right now, because of time, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. But again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, to your appropriate BCCD representative, be it Chris or Candy or Lisa or John, and we'd be happy to give you a more specific presentation that's catered to what you are trying to accomplish. Thank you everyone for your time, and have a great day.